Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
Welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down. Today we're welcoming Ben. Ben's someone that I've known for a few years now. I've actually done some of his courses. I've also done a bit of work with him with some of his clients. Just for full disclosure. But Ben is a teacher, talker, coach and guide working to breathe new life into tired systems, be it you, the individual, your company or society at large. Over the last 30 years, Ben has co-founded, ran and sold several businesses. He's also a 20 plus year student. See, I'm glad I put my teeth into this, but I'm probably going to get the pronunciation wrong. He's a 20 plus year student in the Theravada Thai forest Buddhist tradition and to a lesser extent, Taoism. Fusing these paths, an entrepreneurial creativity with a rich love of life, the mind and our bigger natures, Ben works with senior leaders grappling with midlife transitions, helping orientate their work and their companies to a calm, joyful creativity and adaptability, ultimately helping them thrive in complexity and navigate their ways around uncertain futures. Ben explores these ideas and talks with others via his podcast and blog, Peripheral Thinking. He lives in Hove with his partner and two boys. So apologies for that mealy-mouthed intro there, Ben. Lots of words I couldn't pronounce. Some
Which
that
is
I
a good
understood.
reminder, actually. It's quite a good sort of sense check, isn't it? It's like if it's the measurable. You would know this from sort of the value of copywriting. Are we using words which mean nothing to people and they can't say? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, maybe change the words.
So but that was obviously a good. We set that up so we could discuss that example. Well, to start with, I know Volker has got a lot of interest in Buddhism. I knew that you had an interest in Buddhism, but 20 plus years. Well, for a start, I didn't know you were that old, Ben. But I
was very small, like the Dalai Lama, when I found my way to it.
I was going to say, yeah, sorry, on which past life are we, or which life are we talking about? As I say, I've got, that probably explains the extent of my Buddhism knowledge. But, perhaps to start with, how did you get into Buddhism? And sorry, just a caveat. One of the things that I know you've been talking about a lot is sort of the theme of initiation into midlife, which is something we're going to touch on. But yeah, it'd be great to hear sort of about your entrance into Buddhism and how that's impacted your life.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the wonderfully spoken introduction. I appreciate that. What was my route into Buddhism? I'd read a book by the Dalai Lama, actually. And I was then having a conversation with somebody and they had said, well, why didn't I go? So I live in Brighton, as we mentioned, or in Hove. And I was talking about this and they said, why don't you go do an introduction to meditation course at the Buddhist Centre in Brighton, which I did, like a sort of, fairly sort of typical thing, like a 8-week introduction to Buddhism and meditation. But I think a lot of really why people come into this, particularly so in the West, is that it's a route into meditation, essentially. So I went and did this 8-week course, once a week in the evening, that kind of thing. And then I did another sort of, the follow-up. Whatever. I don't think that quite gets to advanced, but maybe it's the kind of very, very beginning and then the slightly
Enlightenment plus.
Exactly. It goes straight there. And so that really was the kind of route in. There was something that I kind of found really resonant in the teaching and the practice of of meditating. And I think maybe it kind of also appealed to my curious learning nature. And, there is a sort of almost never ending path of stuff you can learn. But yeah, it really sort of, spun on that. I'd read a book by the Dalai Lama. Somebody said, go do an introduction to meditation and Buddhism course, which I did. And it opened from there. And then I've kind of practiced with a whole range of different teachers, some more kind of lay teachers, some equally more still in the monastic tradition, so monks. And then a feature of my year ever since really has been going on a silent meditation retreat. The kind of first one I did was for a weekend, and I found it incredibly hard, but also something weirdly kind of compelling about it. And so every year since then, I've gone on a retreat, and now each June I do a 2-week silent meditation retreat, which is sort of opportunity to kind of deepen understanding of kind of Buddhism and how it relates and interacts with our everyday life, and an opportunity to deepen practice around meditation. And it's like a sort of topping up your meditation to see you through for the coming year. So that's some of the path, really.
Sorry, a stupid question. Do you guys know each other? Obviously joined the call a couple of minutes after you joined, but I know Volker's been on several silent retreats. So have you crossed paths? Waved, not obviously said hello, but
no. Where have you done those, Volker?
So I've been over to we're on the spot now. Uckfield. Been over to Uckfield, to the Buddhist retreat center there from the Kandana or whatever it's called tradition, I think.
Yeah.
So I've done a couple winter retreats, but usually just 3 days, extended weekends. So I haven't gone the full 2 weeks yet. If I say it's on my to-do list, sounds terrible. I'd love to do it, but I need to find the right sangha. I need to find the right community to do it. And I'm not sure I have found that yet. And so I don't think I'm ready yet to do that. So I'd like to do maybe a week long retreat. I think would be ideal for me, finding the right time. And I decided not to go this year. So I've done 2 years in a row and decided not to go this Christmas. So it's always like a weekend before Christmas. They used to do it in the summer as well, but they don't do it next year in the summer.
Right.
So yeah, they're quite close to their let-in for the longer retreats. So yeah, maybe you can recommend some nice communities. Because I mean, we're very close. I'm in Hasseck, so I've been to Brighton Buddhist Center. So I don't know if you go to the Brighton Buddhist Center, which Buddhist Center you go. And I have mixed experience with Buddhism in Brighton as well. But that's maybe not for the podcast to discuss.
Yeah, but no, it's so same. I actually, not that we need to go too far, but the same. The Buddhist Center in Brighton, I went to for those initial courses.
Yeah.
And about some way through the second part of that course, the teacher said, "Oh, by the way, you might hear about the Buddhist Center in the news because there's been some sort of accusations of basically inappropriate behaviour by the people who were leading it." And I was like, do you know what? I think these are not my people. And that was the end of my relationship with the Buddhist Center. And they've since changed their name and done all of those things that organisations like to do when they've got a little bit of sort of dirty history they're trying to wipe away.
Yeah, there's lots going on. I mean, I went to a couple of really great sessions, Sunday sessions, sit-down sessions, which was great. I think with Buddhism, at least in my experience, it depends who the teacher is, right? Who you get. Then location almost doesn't matter. But yeah. So we should exchange notes on that afterwards.
We should. I guess a final point on that. So one of the business that I part own is an online platform called Sangha Live, and that is an online platform provide sort of access to a whole range of different Buddhist teachers, and has a range of different sitting up options to kind of sit as a live practice and teaching every morning, a couple of Saturdays a month and Sundays. There's also access to a whole range of different teachers there. So start by checking that out. But yes, I can definitely provide some pointers to retreat places that I've
How do I join that? Is it a free sign up? Is it subscription?
Yes, free sign up. So it's all done on Dana. So done in the tradition of the teaching, which is you donate what you think it is worth if you have means to donate. So almost everything that we do is offered on that. There are some paid courses which you can also do, but every morning there is a teacher. So each week a teacher leads the morning meditation, which is at 7 a.m. UK time, and that's all done. And then every other Saturday there's a 3-hour session, and all of that is provided. And a Sunday evening, all of that is provided on donation basis.
Okay, yeah, I definitely checked it out. I saw it on your website. So
oh yeah, and we'll definitely obviously put that in the show notes.
Mm.
So, well, Volker's made an interesting point there about, your Buddhist teacher. And, and sort of we had a conversation, me and Volker had a conversation earlier today, around therapy. And I think it is, with so many of these things, we all had favourite teachers at school and teachers we couldn't bear. And I think with anything like that, whether it is sort of coaching or therapy or, sort of religious teaching, spiritual teachings, it is very much about the relationship between those two people.
Yeah, very much. You kind of navigate to certain styles of teaching over others. And, every now and then, somebody will kind of pop up, at a point, and there's a kind of connection. I remember just on the kind of Buddhist thing, I remember I went to sort of evening meditation practice at another different place in Brighton. And there was about 8 people or something there. And there was a monk there there's a Buddhist monastery not far in Sussex called, a place called Chithurst. And there was a monk from Chithurst who had come to kind of host this session one evening many years ago. And there was a conversation kind of happening there. And I remember asking him a question and him saying to me, "You need a teacher." It was just a sort of timely kind of reminder and pointer. And so that then caused me then to reflect. And he said, so just think about, whose teachings you've come across that you like, and go ask them. So I went back over, just reflected on things that I'd done or kind of teachings that I heard, whatever. And I contacted somebody whose teaching had resonated with me. And he then went on to become a kind of quite long-term teacher of mine. But I think the interesting thing around that, it is about the connection. It is about the person. And sometimes these things kind of, happen into your life at just the appropriate time, or there's an intervention like that and somebody says, no, you need a teacher. Go find a teacher. Then ultimately it is about the person you've had a connection with.
Hello folks, it's Volker here. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills or sales leadership skills or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself, so you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website, www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
So, obviously, Buddhism has had a huge impact on your life, and you obviously sort of talked about creating and selling several businesses. Was there a sort of a point in that journey where, you sort of talked about meditation and mindfulness often being the sort of entry point into Buddhism. And, I think, a lot of us discover or turn to mindfulness and meditation when, we're completely stressed, we're overwhelmed. Often it can be, I've got this amazing business, so why am I happy? I'm earning money. So was there a point where was there sort of a specific point where you're like, I need to find something, otherwise I am going to lose my mind, for want of a better word?
I think it was less that there was clearly a certain point, more that there was a kind of sort of slow unfolding, right? And or unraveling and or revealing, however you want to sort of describe those things. Just one little thing that I did hear a really useful teaching the other day, which was sort of talking about, so us in the West, lots of people come to that because we're looking for meditation and mindfulness as a way of mitigating, managing stress. But actually, so I'm told, the teachings in Buddhism are actually not about that. Like, meditation is not the thing you do first. The thing that you do first is just a kind of reflecting on how it is that you live, so that you're living with kindness, right, to yourself and to other people, that you are living with a spirit of generosity. These kind of ideas more about how you live, that you're kind of sort of choosing not to kill people, those sort of ideas. Then when you have that as a kind of foundation, as a base, then you come to mindfulness as a way of reflecting on those qualities, as a way of kind of building on there. And I think the reason that's sort of important is we, like you say, we tend to get to a point where we there is a ever increasing overwhelm, and we're trying to make the overwhelm go away. And so we find our way to mindfulness as a way of trying to manage, keeping our sort of fingers in the dam of overwhelm as it is coming towards us. And I think for me, it was less in the beginning that I was clearly conscious of an overwhelm, but I clearly felt an anxiety. I clearly felt sort of anxious. I knew that the kind of flavors that had informed how I was running my companies were very competitive, very driven, very hard on myself, and then as a consequence, hard on people around. So there was clearly a lot of tension in how I was doing. And I think the reason I probably found my way to the Buddhist Center and those, because I was trying to find some relief from that tension. Although if you'd asked me at the time, I probably wouldn't have been able to articulate that. I just read a book by the Dalai Lama and someone said, go to the Buddhist Center. But as I kind of reflect back on it, so it was less that there was clearly a kind of breaking point, but more like, there's a dissatisfaction. I'm trying to make these kind of, unpleasant feelings of sort of stress and tension go away, looking for something which can help with that. And then the kind of meditation started as a kind of parallel but separate track to my business life. And I think what happened was, over the 10, 15, 20 years since, there was just a kind of feeling that these are separate. Like, not that the business that we were doing was in any way sort of, really bad. It was a design business. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not that bad, but it was just a kind of feeling that there is that there is this one track of my life and another track of my life, and that there was a sort of, an inevitable coming together of those things. But what that, the form that took was really not clear to me for a long time. So in answer to your question, it was less that there was a single moment, more that, there was clearly this seed which found its way to me via whatever kind of, via whatever means. And meditating was a kind of cultivating of that. It's interesting, when I remember very early on, one of the first times that I was practicing meditation, I do remember really clearly having a feeling and some insight that there was something really tremendously powerful about the act of meditation. And I remember being quite unnerved by that thought at the time, thinking, oh, fuck, what does this actually, clearly feeling the effect of that. And like I've done, and lots of people do, is I kind of promptly park that thought because it's like, I don't quite know how to sort of deal with this. But I really did clearly sort of get some insight. There is something very powerful about this practice. And so I think that became a big motivator to continue.
That's funny as you're saying that. I mean, I remember sort of when I first... I'd sort of had I'd been introduced to a mindfulness session. And I just remember, the classic thing of actually just playing what I was going to do that day, which obviously isn't the point of it. And then my second time, I sort of had, I mean, it might have been the sort of environment, the circumstances it was in, but sort of almost like feeling it in my brain, I want to say. And as you were saying that, I sort of started getting like the goosebumps and the prickles that I felt then, which, is I don't know, it's quite mad, really. But yeah, so like Volker, you've obviously you've been meditating for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we funny enough, I thought you would bring that up because we spoke about that earlier. I mean, I always say if I hadn't had my mindfulness practice, which I started in 2006, so a couple of years ago, and then I started, if I say classic, or I had two reasons to start really. One, I was interested in meditation, and B, I was always interested in high performance, and so if I say that's how I ended up being an executive coach, kind of like looking at what do high performers do, and they meditate in the morning, so that got me curious. So I ended up going to meditation classes in what is it called? Anyway, in London. Comes back to me in a minute. Just off Covent Garden, little, and then you go down the basement and stuff, and I think so. So I took 7 redundancies in my career, and I think without this mindfulness practice I built up over the years, I don't think I would have mentally been able to cope with it. If I say to stabilize myself, and to connect, with myself. So if I say to this day, I need my 20 minutes in the morning. I mean, I sometimes shorten it to 15 just because when I'm hungover or like things like that. I mean, I shouldn't be drinking as a Buddhist anyway, but maybe we park that discussion. So I think mindfulness practice is. I think everyone should do it, right? And if I say, maybe against popular belief, I think if you have a meditation practice or mindfulness practice where you say you go out for a run, right, and that is your form of meditation, then I think that's fine, right? You don't need to sit still and and follow or don't follow your thoughts. I mean, the other thing, really concentrating, right? There was something else I wanted to
You've turned into me.
Yeah, I know.
I'm forgetting your train of thought mid-sentence.
You're developing ADHD now at my age. So one is like how you practice mindfulness, and B, there's the second point I forgot. But I assume you practice focus meditation as well, right? So you're not into transcendental meditation, or do you do both?
No, yeah, I'm not into transcendental. So yeah, the tradition that I've sort of taught is what it was called insight or vipassana. So it is kind of awareness of the body essentially, or of the breathing. Yeah,
because I started in lockdown. I was really curious what transcendental meditation is all about. So I tried to find a course, and most courses, as you might know, are about 2, 3, 4 grand, right?
Yeah,
and done by Patrick Swayze or whoever these actors are. Revealing my true age here because I don't know many actors. David knows that. And I found a chap up in I think he's in Hull or somewhere up north, and he has been teaching it for 40 odd years, and he taught me online over Zoom for like I want to say 200 quid or so. And I like transcendental meditation. It's different. It's not my preferred way of meditating, but if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go to sleep, I have the choice of, if I say the body scan, the traditional focus meditation that puts me to sleep, or transcendental meditation, which just relaxes your body, or you're waking up, I don't know, at 7 o'clock on a Saturday, you go like, oh, I want to sleep a bit longer. You do 20 minutes of transcendental meditation in bed, you completely relax, and you go back to deep sleep for another hour, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And again, I see it a little bit as a tool in my toolbox, right? I can pick and choose. But if I say my go-to meditation is definitely focus meditation, that's where I get most out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, already we're halfway through, and so I want to try and get back on track with the whole initiation subject. I mean, I'm just looking at one of your posts here, Ben. It says, once upon a time, we would have crept into your tent in the dark of night. We'd have stolen you away, whisking you off to the elders, calling time on your childhood. And these elders, they'd have sent you on a mission, a journey. It would hurt. You'd have suffered, been scared, maybe for your life, unfamiliar places, unable, unsure how to respond. I mean, I guess, a lot of the experiences I've gone through over the last sort of 18 months, and something I've said is that this podcast has provided a boot camp, which a lot of the things we discussed have happened in my life. And, we are, I think, obviously you're sort of talking about initiations where, it would have been that transition from teenage to adulthood or slightly younger. I mean, and I think in and again, it's why we, set up the podcast. And I remember like one of our guests describing it as a complete clusterfuck of a time in your life where, your parents are getting ill, your kids have grown up, they're possibly getting into trouble. You've got friends that are getting ill, sadly some are dying, as I say, the same with your parents. And it, it is, and so I was, I said, I took my dog out for a walk before this conversation. And, and I was just sort of thinking about it. And, I was just like, Jesus, yeah, I am now the, like, if we were thinking in like Game of Thrones sort of terms, I'm like, oh, well, I am now the Lord, I'm Lord Pawsey now. Like, I am the patriarch.
Lord Pawsey.
And that's how, I know I don't normally ask you to address me like that on the podcast, just in private, Volker.
Yeah.
But,
it's going to come back on Thursday, by the way.
But yeah, so I mean, is that sort of the kind of thing you're talking about, or have I oversimplified it?
No, I mean, I think we can probably not oversimplify things too far, can we? I mean, but no, that is. I think so. I was interested in a few different things. One, and actually, this was partly a kind of thoughts which were sort of I explored with people on my podcast, and particularly I spoke to an Indian guy who describes himself as a contemporary mystic. And I'd say for him, that is 100% true. He's in fact somebody who you guys should definitely speak to on yours. He's a man called Sujith Ravindran, and he's a sort of brilliant, beautiful, inspiring, insightful man. And he was talking about, an initiation that he went on. I think he was 14 or 15, and it was in the Himalayas. And, he was told to go see this teacher, and the teacher said to him, okay, you basically, now I'm going to oversimplify. Okay, you need to walk 8 days up the river and then 8 days back to me, and good luck, off you go. Come back here. You need to be back here by this point, and I'll see you then. And so off he goes, right? And so he's 15 years old. If you think about that, I don't know if anyone has kids, like actually how far removed this is from really what lots of 15-year-olds are doing, certainly kind of
well,
around,
you look at your...
around here.
Whereas now you look at your phone, it's like, oh, that's where they are. It's not exactly. Like I'm sending them off for 16 days.
Exactly. But he went on this, on a transformative initiation, with all of the struggle. And so the things that I was alluding to in that, in the post that you referred to there is, there are common characteristics of an initiation which involve a separation. And sort of, culturally often that was a violent separation. I would steal you away. But the principle of there needs to be a separation. There then needs to be some feeling of struggle. And then with the sort of, from the struggle and the challenge, there comes the return. And so then I'm able to come back to my community, in the olden days, to my tribe, but whatever that might mean, all of these things still true today, with this newfound understanding, insight and confidence. And the thing that I was sort of struck by when I was talking to Sujith and just being curious about this anyway, is we were talking about the kind of cost really to masculinity, actually, of there not being these ceremonies now for boys to go through. And the cost of this is that there are many, many men wandering around, well, really boys wandering around dressed as men, because they've never gone through this process, right? And a lot of that really kind of resonates with me. But I was also then reflecting one of the great things, of course, that an initiation teaches you, affords you, is a confidence that I can get through times of significant change, right? Because I've done it once. And so even though there's very real benefits for boy to man transition, there's also the secondary thing, which is I've gone through difficult change once. I understand that, this getting to a transition point where part of me is going to die, and that something new in me is going to be born. Because in a way, that's kind of what I'm learning from an initiatory ceremony. And so I was also then reflecting that, particularly as what happens for kind of men when they're getting to midlife, part of the big struggle is we've never been schooled in the idea that, of course, change is normal, right? Change is an ever present. We don't really like that in the West, and our kind of mind fixes on the opposite of that. But just the kind of the simple practice and point of we've not been through an initiation, so we just don't have the internal resources to go, okay, this is good. This is a time of change, a time of transition. Something which is no longer right for me is calling to die, to be let go of. And in the letting go of that, I'm going to sort of step into what is new. And so I was really curious about the kind of principle and process of initiation from that point of view. And also then how it sort of intersects with our work life that we have here in the kind of, Northwest, where and I don't mean the Northwest of the UK, globally, you get what I'm talking about, rather than we're in Liverpool.
After hearing about the transcendental meditation in Hull, I was like, it's all happening up north.
But yeah, so this kind of the principle of doing that, because so I was going to say, like, for a lot of our working lives, and this isn't just true of men, this is kind of true of for lots of people, we stumble into the work that we're going to do, right? And it's not really very conscious, or if we think it's conscious, but actually in many instances we're playing out stories which have been gifted to us by our families, stories which have been gifted to us by school, stories which have been gifted to us by culture. And by story, I mean, like the story of this is appropriate work, this is what sensible, right-thinking people do, they work in this way, they contribute in this way, all of those things. Culture has laid down for us many, many, many stories. And the thing that I was starting to be curious about is, just an idea that maybe one of the things which is happening at midlife is, the hold of that story is lessening, right? Its grip is weakening. But of course, that is a very destabilizing thing, because we have defined our lives on the basis of living this way, doing this kind of work, playing out this story. But actually, that's not, in many respects, who we are. Yeah. So who we are, I think there is something in our nature which is quite different to that. And so I was really curious about the idea of kind of initiation or an initiatory journey to help us let some of those dominant stories that have been gifted us by culture and family, simplistically, to let some of those things die, so we might start the process of discovering who we are, so that can start to kind of take root for the next part of our life. And actually, the thing that I found for myself, but also then people I work with, that's also a very energizing thing. Because one of the ways that midlife presents for people is a feeling of tiredness, right? So, I'm sort of feeling of tiredness, or a lack of joy, these sorts of things. And of course, those things, they are signals, right? That, something is not right. There is something's not right. So it's like, okay, so what can I let die of that is not right, so I can start to explore and experiment with the things which are actually energizing for me? Because I think the midlife and beyond doesn't just need to be a long grey road of tiredness and sort of joylessness and just kind of trundling on like a sort of grim motorway to some sort of inevitable death. We can get off that road and engage again with joy, engage again with energized motivation. And I'm kind of interested in the role of initiation being the letting go of that, so we can step into what comes.
So what you're essentially saying, and I had a peek on your website as well, when we get to midlife, we unlearning things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the opportunity, I think, is to unlearn.
Yeah, because I think, and I don't know who said that first, and and I don't want to claim it for myself, but then
claim it
because it wasn't me.
You're turning into Jay Shetty now.
Yeah, it probably was Lord Horsey who said that first, but but the whole, sometimes in life, it's not all about learning and gaining more and more in terms of wisdom, right? And we can talk about, material goods as well. But it's about unlearning, and getting rid of, if I say, look at therapy, right? What we learned as children, right? Whether it's limiting beliefs or, trauma, and unlearning patterns and behaviors in order to move forward. Right? So that's, I think, what you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Unlearning and letting things go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important. And I think midlife is exactly that stage where we are, and what you both said earlier. I mean, that's why it's called midlife. It's not only midlife because we are, if I say, halfway through. It's also because we're in the middle of our kids, being young and growing up, and our parents, the old people, going away. Right. So we're in the middle of a lifeline essentially as well. So that kind of made me think earlier. I mean, I'm thinking linear. I know other people think differently in terms of time, but David doesn't think time at all.
I mean, it's sort of interesting, and I think sort of the other thing that I was going to sort of say about, being Lord Pawsey, but it's, I'm now sort of out the other side of all the crap that I've been through over the 18 months. And yeah, I feel such a stronger, more confident person for it. And, it's, the journey wasn't particularly pleasant, but, it's, I feel like a sharper, more, as I say, more confident person. And I guess, there is, like with my dad, he worked for BT. It was the first job he got, and he worked there till he retired. So my career was always a complete mystery to him. And I guess I sort of felt a certain pressure that I've taken a different path, but I need to sort of show that I've achieved the security for my family, that, he the financial security he did. But yeah, I mean, and sorry, just going off on another tangent, it's sort of what you were saying about the stories that we learn from our parents. There's this incredible story that I heard about, someone went round to their, so their partner would always cut the end off a joint of meat before they put it in the oven. And then they went round to the mother-in-law's roast dinner, and she cut the end off and put it in the oven. And, he was like, oh, your daughter does that. Why do you do that? She's like, well, my mum used to do it. And I think the mum was still alive. So, and he's like, well, does it improve the flavour? What's the reason? And then, so she, asked the grandmother. She's like, oh, well, our oven was too small. We can never fit the meat in. So we had to cut the end off. But, obviously 2 generations had learned that when you put meat in the oven, you cut the end off.
Yeah. That is a brilliant example, isn't it?
So, I mean, have you sort of created an initiation in your platforms to help people get through this, or is it almost like a process of finding your own initiation?
You cut out a tiny bit. Is it your question is about the extent to which I create those, or they find their own way to their own initiation that works? Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting because, like you were talking about having kind of, found your own sort of path. And in a way, of course, to varying degrees of kind of messiness or effectiveness, we all find our own path. And so in some form, we're going to do what is right for us. I am interested in bringing some intentionality to it, and how you help people maybe at the point where they're starting to kind of recognize the sort of joylessness, or they are kind of appreciating because something has happened. Because often there is a shock, isn't there? There's some sort of external event that happens. It might be health related, might be wealth related, might be work related, family, whatever it might be, something which causes you to kind of pause and reflect. So like a few sort of examples. There was one client of mine, and he's a very senior guy in a big company, but he had a moment of reflection where he realized that the age he was, his mother had died before she was at that age. And this kind of realization like, it's the kind of moment that kind of forces you to think. Equally, another person I know, he, again, senior person in a large company, had cancer, basically had bowel cancer, and his dad had actually died of bowel cancer. So he had regular screenings anyway. And so it kind of forced him to be off work, and fortunately he's fine. But there was an interesting point some way through his treatment where his wife had said to him, are you sure you want to go back? Because, whilst there is a kind of familial thing, he's in a big stressful role, right? And so in the end, he did go back. And I think part of the reason he went back is out of a loyalty, because the company had been very, very good to him when he was ill. But my personal thing is, I think part of the reason he went back is he doesn't quite know who he is if he's not the managing director of that company. And then a kind of third example, which is similar, person's been chief executive of a pretty big company, like 10 offices around the world, constantly flying around, had to leave because of burnout, although burnout doesn't have a label, is not a label that doctors can give. I was discovering the other day. Doctors can say you have stress and anxiety, but burnout is not a thing that a doctor is able to kind of say. But anyway, so I was kind of curious about, these people and how you help maybe catch people before that, or even when they are in that, there is a huge amount of unlearning that they need to go through in order to navigate. And I found just sort of simple things, like things I actually also get from going on retreat, that you can help, you can give people the journey of separation, challenge, return, that doesn't just need to be me running into your bedroom in the middle of the night, which might weird everyone out, and kind of grabbing you out of your room. Just simple things. Actually, you can take people out of their context for a day, even to the woods, for example, and little things like forcing them not to use their phone for the whole day, having no internet access for the whole day, not knowing exactly where they're going for the day, not knowing what the sort of structure of the day is going to be, are destabilizing things. And a lot of this, I think, is about our ability to kind of thrive in ambiguity, because a lot of how we live is about this illusion of control. I have control over everything. I'm controlling this. I'm controlling my whole company. I'm controlling the teams. And this is illusory. And so I'm interested in creating these either sort of relatively short, like a day, or slightly longer opportunities which learn from initiation and help people kind of, get some of the benefit of doing it, like I said, which doesn't involve me creeping into their bedroom in the middle of the night and or sending them off to the Himalayas. Neither of those things I'm qualified to do nor able to do.
There might be some legal issues around that
maybe,
as well.
Maybe.
But I mean, yeah, it's sort of what you've described there. It is, and it's a phrase that I've sort of heard in like a sales consultancy that I worked with, that, it's getting comfortable being uncomfortable, essentially. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it is just so apparent whenever there is a small hiccup, and I want to say small hiccup, but COVID was a massive hiccup, but I think that was, a prime example of how little control we have, and how quickly, just looking at the toilet roll situation, how quickly things can descend into, almost into anarchy. It's
yeah.
Forgot about the toilet rolls.
Yeah.
That all was a bit shit, so I couldn't.
Yeah.
Couldn't resist. We're running out of time, Ben. This I feel like we only get started. I mean, we often say that. I mean, Lord Parsey always says that. when we
it's good. Leave them wanting more.
So
exactly.
I think we should catch up offline because we're so close and I think we move in similar direction. But that topic I think is great, and what I take away is definitely it got me thinking about this whole unlearning and about midlife and what it means, right? So, I'm now thinking circular rather than linear, and how that all works and what it means deep down, right? Not like superficial. So so thanks for that. That's it's definitely a thought starter for Friday. If people want to find out more about you as a Sangha community, I just signed up for the newsletter. Where do they go? What's the best way of getting in touch and reaching out?
Yeah, the best way. So the best thing to do would be to look up my blog and podcast. So Peripheral Thinking, and so they'll find that at peripheral-thinking.com, and I can give you all the links for that. That'll be a good way into sort of keeping in touch with what I'm doing and what I'm interested in. And just one tiny little last point for you, Volker. You've made reference to thinking linearly, if that is even a word. Yeah. I am really interested in the opportunities that come if we start thinking cyclically, if that's even a word. But you get what I mean. Rather than lines, circles, actually.
Yeah.
So basically, you're saying you did make up those words for me to stumble through at the start there, Ben.
There we go. That's a nice cyclical returning to the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, what did someone say the other day to me? He said, Volker, I said something like, we're getting old and then we die. And I think his comment was something like, but what if we never die? Right? So what if it's cyclical? And what if we actually don't die?
There we go. That's a question to end.
Lord Palsy is going to interject there.
because we don't, right? But anyway. Or do we?
Well, I think we definitely need to book another one in. So thanks very much, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com or podcast@manupdown.com with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.